What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to break down what the news, data, and technicals are telling us about the overall market, how this may affect Tesla, and also what big earnings just came out that will affect how the whole market moves for tomorrow. But before I say anything about all of this information, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $3,000. And the best part is, any could be a free Tesla share. The offer ends in just 8 hours. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla was down 1.16% for the day, closing kind of flat, not really way too red or not too green. It had some relative strength today as well, as it actually held up a lot better than the overall market. And this is actually the overall price action from Tesla, at least, is very similar to what I predicted. I told you all we'd likely see a sell-off in the morning thanks to the First Republic Bank news. The market continued to actually sell off even lower than expected, but Tesla got a nice bounce as I thought it would. Then I told you guys that Tesla would likely see some very sideways price action and close very flat, maybe somewhere in the red. And I did anticipate that we would see a very big reaction, however, after the market closes going into Wednesday, because we had Microsoft and Google's earnings. But to start us off, I first want to actually break down what happened with the earnings reports and how this is going to likely affect the market so far. Now, when it comes to the market selling off, First Republic Bank is down over 50%. It crashed very hard because of the fact that their deposits dropped like a rock. They just absolutely crashed, and that's not good news whatsoever for the economy as a whole. They lost over $100 billion in customer deposits. What else is important about this is $30+ billion were actually granted to them from the bigger banks to help them out. So it would have been much worse without them in total. So that's part of why the market sold off. We also had consumer sentiment news that came out that was not really too great going forward. And also the housing data wasn't the best as well. But now for tomorrow, we have more mortgage applications data before the market opens, followed by some crude oil and gasoline data. And then for Thursday, we have initial jobless claims with the GDP numbers, followed by Friday when we have the PCE report. So Thursday and Friday are going to be the biggest data days. Tomorrow is going to be somewhat significant thanks to the housing numbers coming out. But excuse me, sorry guys. But what's going to be a lot more significant is going to be the earnings that are actually coming out right now. So Alphabet has reported revenue so far, and they actually beat so far for the first quarter. They did also say its board authorized a $70 billion share buyback, which is actually very, very good news. And they are going to be cutting costs even more. So once again, this helped it actually push up quite a bit. It is actually cooling off a little bit during the conference, which is going on right now. We'll see how this continues, but so far, so good. On top of that, looking at this in more details, when it comes to EPS, it was $1.17 versus $1.06 as the estimate, so that's a nice beat. And revenue was also a pretty significant or pretty nice beat by over $1.1 billion. Not super significant, but still pretty good. So overall, more good than bad earnings for Google. Some sectors were not that great though, but like I said before, more good in terms of the share price's reaction. Let me just check it right now. Google should be up, I believe, about 2% or around there. It's about up, let me see, 1.99%. So pretty good so far. Let's hope it continues to hold up. 110 is going to be some very important resistance. Then secondly, we have Microsoft, which is actually ripping right now. It's up over 6%. That is bullish for the stock market. It's actually buying for 194. If it breaks that, I mean, it could get closer to $300, but it's looking pretty good. Why is that? When we look at the data, despite some cloud struggles right here, Microsoft actually did quite well. If we look at the numbers specifically, we could actually see that some things were not that great for them. Their hardware was a little bit down, the revenue for that. Gaming revenue was a little bit down, but their Xbox content and services was up, and other things were actually pretty okay. And on top of that, this is what's actually helping it a lot more. The outlook is still pretty decent for them. And they also mentioned the fact that looking at their EPS, pretty solid beat, $2.45 versus the estimated $2.24. And their overall revenue was quite a beat overall, closer to 53 billion versus 51 billion being the estimate. So they did beat on EPS and revenue. Guidance is pretty decent, and so far this is good news for them. Let me just close a couple of these tabs because it's pretty crowded up here. But then for tomorrow, let me just mention that now that we have Microsoft and Alphabet, for tomorrow we're going to see a reaction to that. And then remember, Meta and Roku have earnings as well tomorrow after the market closes. The reaction is going to happen on Thursday to them, so make sure you're ready for that. And then we have the big dog, Amazon, after the market closes on Thursday. We are going to be expecting a massive move by Amazon. It's going to shake the entire stock market, so get ready for that on Friday. So big earnings are coming. Make sure you guys are ready for this. But when it comes to Tesla, so far Tesla's doing all right. It's not doing too horrible, not doing too great either, kind of in the middle. And the news that came out was not very good for it. Very, very negative news. We can see right here, basically these companies are just talking about the fact that Tesla's losing its market share in California. Tesla's not doing as well. Let me just close this. Right here, California, EV sales are booming, but Tesla's losing its share. Not really a big deal in my opinion because there's so much competition. What matters more is how is Tesla growing over time? Are they going to be getting more customers? Could they continue to get consistent growth? And how are they going to continue to finance, all these different vehicles as well? Another big question is going to be, if they do continue to grow, how is California going to continue to sustain the amount of energy necessary for all these EVs? And it is still a very big question that's being asked, but I do believe Tesla has some plans to work on it. They are actually working very hard on their solar capabilities, and they're also working on their energy storage business as that's continuing to grow as time goes on. Now, the power grid systems are something else that should be updated around the area in California. But once again, guys, the demand overall for EVs is still very high. And as long as it continues to grow for Tesla, they're completely fine. I do expect Tesla's market share in the entire EV space to actually continue to diminish over time. And the reason for that is because, like I said before, so many competitors are coming. Tesla's not the only EV company now. We actually have companies like Ford hopping in, and Chevy, and Toyota, and the list goes on. So it's completely fine that Tesla has competition, but as long as Tesla continues to grow, as long as Tesla continues to give us good earnings and very consistent growth and innovation, they're going to be fine for the future. Now, what else is worth noting is the fact that many other articles are saying negative things about Tesla. It could fall further from its highs. And that's actually true, guys. I'm not really against this. I'm just going to try to be as unbiased as possible. But we could see more downside for the medium term for Tesla. I did mention to you guys that that's a real possibility. The only question is, could Tesla bounce before? Could Tesla hold up and try to get a rebound before we do see more downside in the future? Or is Tesla just going to continue to sell off? Well, that's going to depend heavily on the overall market, the big earnings right now. I believe the stage is set right now for the markets to really react to Amazon and Apple's earnings. Those are going to be two major factors for the next couple of trading days. We have to be ready for that. It's going to affect Tesla. Now, when it comes to Tesla's inventory levels, this thing was at a high of about 606, came down to about 350, and now it's all the way back closer to the 400s. So a slight increase in their inventory levels again, but it did decrease compared to before, which is a good sign. Let's see how this continues to move going forward. We want to see these inventories drop as demand continues to increase. Tesla did announce lots of price cuts in the past, but they did actually raise some prices later on, showing signs of confidence and maybe them trying to improve their margins again. We'll see how that goes. Excuse me, sorry guys. I'm really hoping that Tesla continues to give us growth and they continue to improve on a daily basis. Now, when it comes to their overall volume was pretty flat overall compared to the average, only 121 million, nothing too significant, which is still pretty decent so far. If Tesla gets very high volume and they start pumping on it, that often signals lots and lots of buying pressure, lots and lots of institutions loading up as well, like crazy. And we're not really seeing that right now. We're just kind of range trading for the time being. It's likely going to try to continue like this unless we do pick a big direction. Now, the short volume is also dropping even more, which is a pretty decent sign. This could actually help some more buyers bring the price up as Tesla does become more sensitive to higher volume going forward. Price-price ratio is dropping as I predicted, as Tesla was showing some relative weakness. However, today things did change a little bit, so I could see this bounce a bit because Tesla's gaining some relative strength compared to the markets. Now, Goldman Sachs saying to buy Tesla shares. I actually mentioned this before. This didn't really update, but that's actually another good sign. And then for Wednesdays, Tesla tends to be green about 48.79% of the time. And we also tend to be green about 54% of the time during the month of April. So it tends to be a good month for us. Tesla tends to perform the best during the second hour and also during the fourth hour. Tesla tends to do very, very well. And then also during the second to last hour of the trading day, those are some of the best hours historically for Tesla. And finally, as far as the shorting goes, there has been a big decrease as of a couple of days ago. Only 16 million Tesla shares were shorted as the overall short interest is starting to drop a bit. And that actually tends to help the share price improve a little bit as well. So some improvements in the data for Tesla. The real question is, how is Tesla going to move going forward? Well, let me talk about the bullish and bearish cases now for Tesla and then break down my prediction. So if you're bullish on Tesla, if you think Tesla is going to bounce with the market, it is actually up 0.92% as the market is starting to bounce a bit after the big earnings from Microsoft and Google. If you're really bullish on Tesla on the 1 hour time frame, make sure you watch the 50 EMA. If we break above this like 63 to 63.67 zone, if we break it, it has the potential to go to 165 to 166. That's where Tesla has had some trouble trying to break out. It got rejected here many times over the past couple of days. If we break 166, I'm going to be watching 167.5, 168, followed by around 170. But 168 and around that area is not as significant resistance as 170. So there's going to be a lot of upside or more potential for it to push up if it breaks 166 for the bullish case. If you're bearish on Tesla, if you think this thing is just not looking good, the market is selling off, and if there's a really bad piece of news, we have to watch 160 first. 160 is some very important support. If that fails, this 158 to about 157.5 zone is very, very important. It needs to hold that. If Tesla fails to hold this, it's likely going to come all the way down to 155 and then 150 flat. There's quite a bit of downside to come if it does fail between 158 and 157.5. So far, it's holding it quite nicely. What do I think is going to happen though? What is my opinion on this? Well, so far, Google is holding up nicely and Microsoft is pumping. So far, it's up. Now it's up 8%. Wow, that's crazy. It's all the way up to almost $300. That is crazy, crazy news. It's doing very well so far. This could actually help the market pump as long as it continues to hold up tomorrow. Even if it keeps on going, it turns into a monster. That's going to actually help Tesla and the whole market bounce. So once again, it seems very likely that we're going to see the market try to continue pushing. Tesla's now up 0.93%. In my opinion, make sure we watch this 163 level. I believe tomorrow, if we do gap up pretty hard, there's a chance that we could come down to fill the gap and then try to bounce afterwards. If not, we're just going to watch this 163 area. If it breaks above it, we need to actually hold 163 for a good period of time. If we do so, if Tesla could do this, we have the potential to continue to push and try to get all the way up to 165 to 166 again. And if it breaks it, it could actually get closer to 170. It still is a real possibility. I mentioned this in my previous videos. I know you guys may be kind of confused because there was a video where I told you that I was more confident in Tesla pushing, and I told you we had some bearish signals as Tesla did slow down. But then I told you that it really depends on earnings after that point on. I told you there's both a bullish and bearish case. I am still very bullish for the super long term, of course. For the medium term, I'm kind of more bearish for Tesla. I do believe it's going to come down to the 140s, but that may take another month or two. Before that time comes, for the short term, for the next couple of trading days, for the next week or so, I'm still watching earnings. Tesla's going to react to earnings now. Earnings are going to become very, very important. Also, the PCE reports and also big pieces of data. We have FOMC very soon as well. So that's what's going to affect Tesla big time. For now, I'm just watching it level to level, and I believe it's going to break 163. I think we could try to break this and maybe try to get closer to 165 temporarily. And it really depends on if we could actually break this level, because we could actually reject off 166 again and trade sideways. If we break it, I mean, we could try to get closer to 170. So far, it's very hard to predict because of how the earnings are coming out. We have more earnings coming out tomorrow as well, so don't forget about that. For tomorrow, let me just mention that we have Boeing, a couple of others. Then we have Meta and Roku as well. So make sure you're ready. But I am anticipating a bounce tomorrow for Tesla. I think it's going to try to get closer to 163. For SPY, this thing is now closer to about 408.25. I believe SPY is most likely either going to just cool off a little bit since it's gapping up, then try to get a rebound and just try to continue to push up to about 411. That's the more bullish case. The more bearish case would be like us coming down to like 406 and then failing, seeing 404, 402, then 400 flat. I don't think we're going to crash way more from here because on the 1 hour time frame, we're extremely, extremely oversold. Just look at the RSI. You can see right here, it's so oversold compared to before. Same thing on the MACD. So what this tells me is when you look at the previous levels, I know this chart's kind of small, guys. I do apologize for that. I can't really do a whole lot since it's so big. But the bottom line is, if you look at these levels, okay, back when SPY was at 405, even the 390s, the RSI never fell well below 40, right? It was actually above 40 for quite a while, even back when it was in the 390s and etc. on the 1 hour time frame. And now it actually hit 20 and now it's barely at 40. So it is very oversold. It's due for a bit of a bounce from a technical standpoint. So I do think a bounce is more likely to happen, but I'm always open to any possibility in case we get another very bad piece of news. I just don't see how big the next news catalyst that's coming out is going to be to cause that. So I'm thinking here are the three possibilities. Once again, the bearish case is a break below 406 to test 404 or lower. The bullish case is a break above 409 to go all the way back up to 411 and maybe try to fill this gap if we break gap resistance. Not too sure about that though. What do I think is going to happen? My best estimate is going to be because Microsoft is pumping so far, as long as it continues to hold, we might see SPY gap up, cool off a little bit, but then actually hold and then continue to push for 411, if not a little bit higher for tomorrow. I think the odds favor that. And I do believe that the market's reacting positively to these earnings. For the dollar index, it's pretty flat, so it's not doing as much. So it's not really telling us too much about whether or not the market's about to crash just yet. If it does break above like 102.5, that could become a lot more bearish. And let me just note one last thing about SPY. For the medium term, let me just note that I am quite bearish for the month of like May to June. I do believe there's more downside to come, of course, but I believe we could try to bounce first. And we're either going to bounce first and just remain kind of sideways before we tank, or the market get one last push up thanks to Apple and Amazon, and then we see the market tank later on. Let me just note that for a larger time frame. And once again, I do believe we're going to bounce for tomorrow. Now, anyways, Coinbase, it actually bounced like I predicted. I'm going to go kind of fast from here, guys. I know this video is kind of long. I do apologize. But Coinbase bounced off 54. It's going to likely try to continue to push up. Might cool off a little bit to test the 5 EMA and the 1 hour time frame before it does try to rip for 58 very soon. I think that's very likely. NEO is also up pretty nicely. It's actually approaching $8. I think tomorrow it's going to try to push up for about 8.25 around the 50 EMA, which is 8.22. Then trade kind of sideways from there, but we should actually close kind of green as long as these numbers hold. Microsoft is ripping. It's now up closer. It actually broke 300 temporarily. That's pretty insane. This thing, I mean, earnings are looking pretty good. The reaction is quite nice. It might try to retest this 300 level for major resistance, and it might just break it tomorrow if it keeps going. It looks good so far. Looking at the QQQ, this thing is ripping as well, up 1.2% in the after hours. We might actually push down a little bit because we're gapping up tomorrow in the morning, and then we might see a nice reaction intraday. We don't have to fill the gap all the way, maybe like halfway or just a little bit in a fake out, and then we might just try to keep going right back up to fill this gap up here around this like 315 area. It's very, very possible. The VIX, notice something very interesting about the VIX. The VIX got rejected off this 19.86 level and actually closed below the 200 EMA. We also have this big gap on the VIX way down below around 16.9. We'll see if the VIX holds the 50 EMA or not. If it fails to hold it, this thing could actually come down. If it does hold this and keeps going, the market could actually remain a little bit more choppy, of course. And of course, the market is going to be dictating this. In my opinion, what's likely to happen is it looks to me like the VIX might actually cool off a bit. And that's because of the fact that it did get a nice rejection here. It has this gap down below, and it is showing some signs of weakening momentum. That's likely going to happen because of the market. Looking at Amazon, this thing is up 5% in the after hours. Look at Amazon just rip up, looking quite strong. I want to close my extended hours when looking at this. On the hourly time frame, Amazon dropped pretty hard. It's currently around this 105 area. It might gap down to retest the 50 EMA, may even drop a little lower to retest 104, but if it holds, could try to bounce and it might just try to fill this gap around 106, if not higher. So it looks pretty decent so far. Nvidia, I'm anticipating a bounce on this. It actually dropped pretty hard. It's quite oversold. 262 is where it closed, or it closed very close to that. I'm thinking that it might gap up, come down to start filling the gap a little bit, but then actually reverse in the middle, and then might try to make its way back to about 266 and maybe even closer to 270 if it does continue to keep going. Now, for Apple, we want to see this thing get above 165 for a good sign for the markets. So far, it's barely around the mid 164 area, at least during the after hours. In my opinion, I think Apple might try to get above 165. If it does that, that's going to be a good sign for the markets. And we might chop around between 165 and 166. Google up 2% so far. As long as it continues to hold, we could actually see this thing try to get closer to 110. We have some major resistance right there. If it breaks, that's going to be a good sign. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the 10-year Treasury yield. This gave us a more bullish signal for the markets because the bonds market is not actually agreeing with the current price action. Look at the 10-year Treasury yield. We have a head and shoulders that developed. It came all the way down to where support is. Could it try to bounce off here? It's very possible, but if it does fail, it's going to come down to fill this gap to 32, which would be bullish for the stock market. It also continued to drop with the markets, which is actually very unconventional. But a lot of this is happening because of the bank deposits. What I'm seeing from this is if it bounces, the market might not be as strong, but if it continues to sell off and it starts filling this gap, which is very possible in this head and shoulders formation, that could become bullish for the stock market. I'm not really seeing much of a bullish divergence or anything like that. So let's just note that it's very important. Now, finally, for the markets, guys, we're likely gonna gap up tomorrow, right? Don't forget that we have some important housing data and crude oil data, and don't forget about the fact that we have earnings, especially Meta's earnings for Wednesday after the market closes. For Tesla, I'm prepared for both the bullish and bearish cases, of course, but I just wanted to note that a bounce is more likely to happen for Tesla. It has some more relative strength compared to before, so it might gap up, cool off a little bit, try to fill the gap, or at least do it like halfway, and then just try to continue to approach 163. If it breaks 163, 165 to 166 can most definitely come for Tesla, and we'll see if it could break this. If it breaks it, it could get closer to 170 later. If it fails, which is very likely, it might just trade sideways around 166 afterwards. But I do anticipate Tesla to actually bounce tomorrow quite a bit. All right, guys, thank you all for listening. I just want to note that I have some merch for you guys down below around the comments section if you are interested. If not, I thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget about the Webull link. Offer ends in just 8 hours. Tesla to the moon because the long term is still incredibly bright. I'm super, super bullish for the long term. And peace out.